All right, everybody, welcome to the Titans of Today podcast, where we have Benjamin Cvetkovich and Sandy Wiggers of World Exchange, XPay, various other amazing financial technologies that we'll be covering today. And really our overview of what we want to get down to is for anybody who is looking to understand the financial world better, understand where the financial world is going, financial services. These are two really amazing people for that in particular. Benjamin and Sandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. And for the record, even though my name is Benjamin, you're more than welcome to call me Ben. It's just a little bit easier.
Yes, you got it. Yeah, just a couple less letters there. So with World Exchange, what would you say your mission and your purpose is, being that it's a big topic today, right? We see cryptocurrencies changing the way things are working. We see different financial payments and services and cards and all these things popping up in the financial world, and it will continue to be that way. Where does World Exchange and XPay and all the other great things you guys are doing?
World was created because of and I hate to admit it, but somewhat by accident. Platinum Age Merchant Services, our primary company, was working on a variety of different products to enhance the merchant experience, to help drive business, to conduct marketing efforts, etc., at a lower cost, better, more efficient, and less expensive. And as we were going through these processes and some of these ideas, we actually wound up creating a new payment method type. It is a completely different type. What we discovered is that we are capable, using this payment method type, we are capable of eliminating any chance of transaction-related credit and debit card fraud. As we started to go down that path, we began to realize that we have an opportunity to impact the payment space by completely eliminating the use of false credit cards, the type of transaction fraud that comes from card theft, that comes from breaches, things of that nature, where your credit card information is put at risk. And it changes the way that payment processing is done. Unlike most other technologies that are out there, the technology that we developed completely changes how processing is done. We do use encryption, we do use tokenization, but that is not the primary method with which we are able to eliminate any chance of transaction fraud. What has become an effort to provide better marketing tools, we then spun off into a separate company called World Exchange, that its primary focus is to completely eliminate transaction fraud on a global scale, and then to provide other tools and programs in support of that can improve the merchant experience and the consumer experience, regardless of where they are in the world and regardless of how they make payments. Meaning, it doesn't matter whether this is face-to-face, whether it's a telephone order, whether it's online e-commerce, doesn't matter which. Our solution works just as effectively in every processing environment.
Phenomenal. So you mentioned a little bit how you, in essence, found this, discovered it, created it on accident, in essence, or you stumbled upon it and realized the potential. And what was that moment like, and how did that go internally when you all identified this technology?
Identifying the moment was simple, okay? Once we discovered it, we looked at each other and said, can this be possible? And we were bewildered. At first, we were bewildered. Then we started to explore it further, dig into it deeper, and start looking at everything required to make it work. And then we thought, really, truly, it's very simple. It's not as hard as people think. And then we began, as we started going through the process and talking to key stakeholders within the payment processing space, we began to discover just how much it would change the way that payment processing is done. As an example, we visited with a PCI compliance company, PCI meaning Payment Card Industry Compliance Company. And when we talked to them, the vice president basically said, we wish you a lot of luck because we think that it's important to get rid of transaction fraud, but we don't wish you too much because you'll put us out of business.
Wow.
And as we communicated with them, they went further and they said, from a PCI compliance perspective, we can actually make the questionnaires that take merchants, business owners, anywhere from 1 hour to 6 hours to complete. We can actually get that done with the answer of simply 2 questions. And that is, if the merchant uses our XPay solution, if the answer is yes to that, and then they answer yes to them using it exclusively, done. They're PCI compliant. There's nothing else that needs to be done. No scanning, nothing.
Outstanding. So
Why? So,
go ahead.
No, we find that fairly revolutionary, but.
Absolutely. So how or why would you say that this sort of thing has not been created or adopted when you're talking about, and I believe that you've worked with a lot of these organizations and perhaps Sandy as well, the financial world is processing billions and trillions of dollars of transactions and money coming in and out and profits being made. So how can something like this just be discovered? And what is your take on what that says about the potential for innovation as a whole in the world, and not only financial sectors, but outside as well?
The answer is both simple and complex at the same time. And let me explain what I mean by that. The credit card processing space is, in fact, a closed loop system. What do we mean by closed loop? That means that any merchant who is accepting credit cards has to be approved by an acquiring bank or an acquiring entity, and they have to comply with Visa, MasterCard rules and regulations in order to be able to accept those cards. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is that the consumers have to have a Visa, MasterCard, and when I say Visa, MasterCard, I'm including UnionPay, which is a Chinese card brand. I'm including Discover and Amex in that category, rather than spelling them all out all the time. But Visa and MasterCard require that you, as a card holder, apply for a credit card and then get one from a card issuer who issues those card brands. So in essence, you have to be approved for the card, and the merchant has to be approved to accept the card by Visa and MasterCard in order for the transaction to occur. That is the definition of closed loop, okay? Now, we also have a closed loop system, but our closed loop system isn't as extensive as theirs. Visa and MasterCard have a global closed loop system. Ours is extremely small. But in an effort to honor their commitment that any Visa and MasterCard issued by any bank can be accepted by any merchant, they are focused on what is called interoperability. And they currently have a payment method that is already in place that they are trying to continue to utilize, because if they veer away from it, that means a massive reset and a change in how everything is done, from the acquiring bank all the way down to the merchant. That is both very expensive and undesirable. So as a result, the current payment card industry continues to try to do patches, okay? We have a fraud problem, so let's fix it this way. Oh, they've breached that, so let's do this and add another layer and do another item and continue to make it more complicated. That's what happened when the EMV chip card was introduced. That wasn't enough because of online fraud and because fraudsters were able to break through. So then they come up with new types of tokenization, double tokenization, triple tokenization, and the list goes on as to continuing to try to create patches. Why? Because they're trying to maintain the basic framework that was designed, and so they're continuing to try to create a better framework by adding patches to it.
Reminds me of the Buckminster Fuller quote. Rather than trying to improve an existing reality, the best thing you can do is create a brand new model in total. A brand new.
And that's what we've done. We've created a brand new model, a brand new process. Everything is different. And let me explain what I mean by everything is different. In the traditional credit card processing space, whether tokenized or encrypted, whether there is some kind of a workaround that conceals, hides, or replaces it, every transaction consists of your name, address, phone number, your credit card number, expiration date, CVV code, and if you use a PIN debit system, a PIN code. Every transaction has that in some way, shape, or form. It may be encrypted, it may be tokenized, but it is present. And so what that means is that if you can capture that signal and then reverse engineer the way that it is created, you can gain access to all of that information. The credit card industry is simply trying to make it harder and harder for you to reverse engineer it. Our system eliminates those items from the transaction process. It is not present. It doesn't exist. It's not that it's hidden. It's not that it's tokenized. It doesn't exist. So if you intercept our signal, if you reverse engineer our signal, will you get anything that you can use? And the answer is no.
Excellent. And Sandy, from your perspective in operations as the COO, what are you thinking about and looking at on a regular basis in not only getting to this point with creating a World Exchange, but also looking forward from an operations perspective, what's going on in your day-to-day?
It is taking and making sure that all the data that we actually acquire, we keep extremely confidential, and that we carry that throughout our entire business and down to how we communicate. We try and keep everything tight and keep all that data confidential. And I think that's just going to become the way of the world. We have to be very cognizant of that we are holding information that should not be shared. And we don't do marketing. We don't, on the materials we have on our merchants, we don't do any of that because we don't want that shared with the potential of it getting out. It's exciting. It's creating everything new around it, but trying to keep stuff similar so people can use it comfortably. I get ready to say, does that make sense?
Familiarity factor. There has to be some degree of similarity so there can be adoption. Is that accurate?
There you go. That's exactly it. Mm-hmm.
Now, does that come all the way down to the design of the product and how those things are interacting? Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to add to that because I think that what Sandy said was very good, but allow me to add to that. When she talks about keeping it confidential, what she's talking about is that we capture that information, that type of information from the consumer when they first register with us. And then that information is removed from any form of online access. Keep in mind, because it's not used in the transaction between the merchant and the consumer, it is not transiting between the merchant and the consumer in any way, shape, and form. And so we keep all of that information offline, meaning that there is no internet access to that information. There's no way to access our servers to be able to try to steal the information, because once we get it, we remove it from any form of online access. So when she talks about keeping it secure and keeping it safe, she's talking about taking it away from the internet loop. It's gone, it's off.
So to zoom out a bit and look at the financial services and financial industry as a whole, what are things that listeners could take advantage of in their life? Of course, getting on World Exchange and World XPay as it is in the App Store. What are some things that they could do in their financial life? And this is coming from you two who are deep insiders, have years and years of experience inside and out. What are some things that people should know that perhaps they don't?
Market adoption is the single greatest challenge, and we have resistance in the market adoption arena. And we actually have resistance from the payment processing space. For instance, every time that there's a chargeback, the processor makes money because they're able to charge for processing the chargeback. Who loses? The bank. PCI compliance. We can eliminate the need for PCI compliance. One of the acquirers asked us pointedly, why would I want to do that? That's a huge source of revenue. So consumers need to be aware that the financial space provides motivation to keep you in a status quo.
That's the right. If you incentivize for outcomes, specifically for, like, let's say profits, then they're going to keep those profits.
Use your credit card and your credit card information is stolen and is used somewhere in a stolen or fraudulent transaction, you don't have to pay for it unless you used your PIN number and a debit card. Then you have to pay for it. So if you use a regular credit card or use your credit card or debit card as a credit card without the PIN, then the bank has to pay for it, okay? Never the processor. The bank pays for it, okay? The processor makes money off of those chargebacks, off of those bad transactions. The merchant is tired of being told by everybody and his uncle, I've got the best thing since ice cream. The merchant is tired of being told they need to buy new equipment, having to buy leases, having to do all these things. And so what happens? As long as the merchant is complying with what the industry wants you to do, meaning that you use the chip card properly, so you have the EMV chip reader, okay? As long as you're doing that properly, if you happen to process a credit card transaction with a card that is fraudulent, you don't have to pay for it. The bank will pay for it, okay? So those are methods that are intended to make it safer for merchants as long as they comply with rules, but they also make the merchants complacent. So what we realize is that consumers care about having to go through the hassle of getting a new credit card because one got compromised. But if they download the solution and want to use it, since it is so revolutionary and so different, they can't use it with any merchant who is not a part of our network, okay? So that makes it difficult from an adoption perspective. What we have done is we have created a cashback rewards system for merchants. And we have essentially created an environment where we bribe the merchant by saying to the merchant, if you sign up with us and you utilize our payment processing, as well as make available to consumers to use the XPay solution at your location and our new credit card brand, which I can touch on in a minute, at your location. If you do those two things, as well as a couple of other minor items like advertise for it at your location, have signage, other things that let people know that you have our product, now you're making it available for places that consumers can use it. Now, because they can use it, we give you that cashback reward and we put you in a place, you the merchant, where you're getting a benefit for making it available to the consumer. That is helping us with market penetration. What do we want the consumer to know? We want the consumer to know that there is an answer, and that answer is XPay from World Exchange. There is a ability to use it, but the best thing that you can do is encourage the people that you shop with to get on board with this solution, to watch what we are doing and how we're adding business locations so that you can use it at those participating business locations.
Awesome. Anything to add there, Sandy, from your perspective? Things that people should know, perhaps about the financial services world, financial industry, that can improve their lives, improve their financial results, or the way that they're managing their transactions or what have you.
One of the big things that Ben mentioned is when you as a consumer are using your debit card, remember that if you use that PIN, your PIN becomes active throughout the entire system. So you as a consumer will be liable for any charges that use that PIN. Anytime you go shopping, don't use your PIN. Use your debit card just like a credit card, and you won't be charged. And you're not putting your PIN out there. Keep track of your cards, because there's a lot of people that kind of lose them or don't remember them, and they start getting charges. And they don't know where they're coming from. And sometimes they're stolen, sometimes they're lost. Common financial wherewithal and being thoughtful of it.
Excellent. And Ben, you mentioned the credit card rewards program. I will tell you, I'm a sucker for credit card rewards. I just got an American Express. Don't want to cross-advertise here, but a platinum card. And I'm just all over the benefits and everything like that. So I'm sure there's a lot of people like that as well, looking to improve their credit and maximize their results from their spend. So tell us about your program and the benefits that someone could reap from it.
So that's a good question. Let me answer that in this way. The rewards program, keep in mind, we were trying to get merchants to sign up to be able to accept the card. The rewards program is built in a very similar way to what US Bank does with some of their clients. that if the merchant is signed up with us, we will go ahead and provide cashback rewards to that merchant in exchange for making it a location that a consumer can use their XPay, their World XPay payment solution, and they can use Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, etc. through that, as well as being able to accept our XCard branded credit card, which we have introduced specifically to compete with Visa and MasterCard. Because with it, we can actually provide even greater security and fraud-free guarantees than even with your regular credit card.
So I think this would pertain to many potential listeners. I know that, for example, US Bank is a Minnesota company. I'm here in Minnesota. The US Bank Stadium is probably 2 miles away from me here. And their payment processor, Elevon, as much as I love US Bank, I do use US Bank, and many other payment processors, I think every single one we've ever gone to, including Stripe and others, they are very risk averse, which is totally understandable. It's very calculable. They have models for calculating how certain industries have varying degrees of risk. But with World Exchange and XPay and what you all are bringing forth, is it possible that you are much more confident in your ability to bring on what others might deem as risky industries or merchants or things in that nature?
That is a very good question. And the answer to that question is yes and no. We can provide some industries with much greater security, but yet there are some that we cannot. And let me explain. Okay. The e-commerce space suffers from an environment where people have to put in their credit card number, okay, in order to be able to complete a transaction. Whenever you're placing an order over the phone, you're oftentimes reading your card number, let's say to a hotel or to a pizza location. Our payment solution can eliminate both of those risks, okay? It looks like a wallet, the way that our payment solution is created, but it's not a wallet because your card information is not actually held on your phone. It is also similar to pay by text, for those who've heard about that, where you get a text and then you enter your card number information in that text. It is similar only in the sense that it comes to your phone. It is not similar in any other way. Why? Because online or over the phone, you simply provide the merchant online through their website or over the phone with the person you're chatting with, your phone number, whether it's through the online where it's built into their website or whether they have our payment kiosk at their location for, let's say, a pizza location. They enter in your phone number and the transaction is sent directly to your phone, and you do not have to enter any card number information, only select your card by the nickname that you have created, and it'll automatically be paid without you ever entering or having your credit card information used in transit. Now, that takes care of industries that are e-commerce types of industries and industries that do a lot with over-the-phone types of transactions. But there are industries that we cannot do a lot for, and let me explain. There are industries like, let's say, floor covering, let's say furniture stores, that are considered high risk. They are not high risk because of transaction fraud. They're high risk because of consumer fraud, which is different, and I'll explain it, as well as other problems associated with delivery, okay? So if you order some furniture at a furniture store and it comes in, but it looks slightly different than what you saw at the store because the new group of leather that was cut has more of a reddish tint or something of that nature, you may find yourself in a position where you're no longer willing to accept it because it is, quote unquote, not what you ordered. Now, if that's an honest dispute, consumers and merchants can normally settle it, figure it out, and get it done. But where the criminal aspect of it occurs is things that we have seen where one company purchased $12,000 worth of folding chairs, used them at an outdoor conference for one day, and then processed a chargeback saying that they're not what they wanted, and basically forced them back into the merchant or the business's hands with a full refund where they were no longer new after they had already used them. Okay? That is a form of consumer fraud we cannot address. I met an individual, you'll get a kick out of this. I met an individual who likes to buy clothing online, wears it for a week or two without washing it, returns it, says it didn't fit or wasn't the right color.
No good.
How do you prevent that kind of fraud? Okay? So that kind of fraud does exist. We deal with transaction-related fraud, meaning that your credit card, if it was stolen or somehow acquired illegally and used illegally, we can prevent that. But we cannot prevent you as a customer from cheating the merchant. You take delivery of the food, you complain that it's not what you ordered, it didn't taste good, whatever. You get a refund, you process a chargeback, but you've already eaten the food. How do we stop that? And we can't. Okay? So the answer to your question is yes, we can impact some industries, but there are other high-risk industries that are high risk simply because of the nature of the product being sold, the fact that it's a late delivery, not instant delivery, and the fact that consumers do cheat, they do lie. There is a percentage of the public that does try to get something for nothing.
And are there numbers of the actual percentage of approximately what that would be? Just out of curiosity's sake.
I don't know that they've been able to drill that down. There is a percentage of it. I don't know how much of a percentage, but I would say at the very least 10% of the chargebacks that are processed that are product related, the product wasn't delivered or something else of that nature, at least 10% of those normally have some kind of consumer fraud associated with it.
Understood. So one thing that came up as you were saying that is with World Exchange and XPay, I could basically I could set my cards up in World XPay and then throw them in a safe and just transact using my cell phone number.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. But you have to remember, unlike Apple Pay and Google Pay and those, your card information is not stored on the phone. And that's important. That's very important.
And that goes back to the technology you're doing with the data.
Yep. We have actually seen situations, and I can speak to it personally, where Apple Pay was used specifically to commit fraud at an Apple store in the amount of $16,000. How? By porting a phone number and stealing card number information that they matched to the address of the individual who owned the phone. That we can eliminate. But that is our solution, not the Apple Pay and Google Pay. They are vulnerable in those areas.
Got it. So I'm dying to get into XPay here. I actually do have the app. I can do a screen share. You guys can take me through a demo and we can do that live if you guys are ready.
I need to be at my computer because I don't have my tablet with me to be able to send you a transaction. Sandy,
Okay.
Do you have it with you or are you
No,
away?
I don't. I'm away. Should I get a hold of Greg?
If you'd like to,
Or
yes,
we
you can
can
get a hold
film
of Greg
this
to do a
later
live
on.
demo.
Yeah, we can.
Or we can film it later.
We can bring that part in.
Yeah, okay. We'd be happy to do that, more than happy to do that, and you'd actually get a kick out of it, I think. But yes, neither of us are in a position where I can do that right now, and I don't think Sandy can either. I will tell you this, in preparation for the demo, if you've already downloaded the app, etc., so that we don't take any money off of your credit card, let me give you the test credit card number that you can use so that you can set that up, and that'll make it go a little bit faster next time. Are you ready?
Yes, go ahead.
4242, again 4242, and again a third time 4242, and finally a fourth time 4242. A very original number, I might add.
42 is the solution to the universe, if you are familiar with that.
At least in our
Yeah, exactly.
at least in our space, right? 428 times, and then the CVV code is 3 nines, and for the expiration date put 12/25, and everything else can be personal because it won't matter. Okay. The only other thing that I would mention, I'm sorry.
CVV would be
3 nines.
3 nines. Okay.
And the expiration 12/25. The only other thing that I would mention for yourself or anybody else who downloads this who wants to test it and play with it, the phone number that you register when you download the app and register your app, the phone number must be the number that your app is on. One of the things that we have done, which is where some of our security is located, is that if you download the app on your phone, only that phone can use the app that you've downloaded, period. You cannot port it over to another device. Some people, because they're testing it, they'll put their business phone number down when they're registering, and then it won't work, and we're wondering why, because they didn't put in the phone number that their app is on.
Got it. So to zoom out and go back into the strategy perhaps behind XPay, World XPay, who are you looking at as your target market, your ideal target market, and how are you going about reaching them? Because I know, Sandy, you mentioned some things about marketing and perhaps the uniqueness of your needs to maintain the quality and efficiency of your product.
The answer to that is multifaceted, so I'll address each approach that we're taking uniquely so that you can understand the bigger picture. Okay. First, as we want to get as many merchants on our system as possible, and for that we're using what we call a wealth builder, which is a cashback rewards system for the merchant designed to get as many merchants on board as possible. In the traditional space, and what I mean by traditional space is in the space that can use Visa, MasterCard branded cards. In that space, we have the ability to talk to, let's say, e-commerce sites and reduce their exposure and risk of transaction fraud, of chargebacks due to false credit cards being used, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So that would be one target that we're approaching. Another target that we are approaching is any entity, any business that utilizes a delivery method of any type. Why? Because our merchant app, the merchant portion of our app, and I apologize for the noise you're about to hear for a quick second here, can be used over the phone where the consumer goes ahead and reads the card number, phone number to you over the phone, and you transact business with them remotely. You can transact business with someone.
It sounds like an absolute pleasure being able to do that from a consumer perspective.
And you can do it. We've done the demo where we've done it 6,000 miles away, so it doesn't matter how far a person is. But we also have the ability to put the merchant portion of that on your Android mobile phone so that businesses that are, let's say, at a farmer's market, maybe at a Renaissance festival, some kind of outdoor festival where you don't have good internet capability, you don't have a standard storefront, you can simply use your phone to initiate the transaction with the consumer. So those are the first markets in the traditional space that we would go after because they're the lowest hanging fruit, because there are pain points. E-commerce has the pain point of a lot of fraud. We can resolve that, benefits them, etc. Okay. Also, in a more non-traditional market, with our X-Card branded credit card, we have created the ability to issue a credit card that is absolutely, completely in competition with Visa and MasterCard. Our costs are lower because there is no plastic involved. The card numbers can be anywhere from 10 digits to 4,000 digits long, and the consumer never sees the card number. So imagine a hacker finding a way to break into our system, and let's say that for somehow, some way, they were able to get the card number, and it's a 37-digit card number for you, 26-digit card number for me, and a 91-digit card number for Sandy. How are you going to use that? Because that card number was attached to a particular person, to a particular phone number. You can't use it anywhere on our system, and you can't use it anywhere with the Visa and MasterCard system. So how are you going to use it? Which is a very powerful element, which completely eliminates the possibility of anyone committing fraud with our credit card. Completely new, completely different. Whereas Visa, MasterCard, you've got 16 digits, okay? The first 6 digits pretty much are well known. The first number tells you whether it's a Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or Amex. Visa is 4, MasterCard is 5, Discover is 6, and American Express is 3. The next digits tell you who the issuing bank is, up to 6 digits, and they're usually visible. And the last 4 digits are almost always on the receipt. So out of 16 digits, only 6 are hidden, plus the CVV code, plus the expiration date. It's a lot easier because you don't have as many numbers, number one. Number two, it's all standardized in the name of interoperability. Ours, because it's our system, it's new, it's different, doesn't have to be standardized. So the banks that issue don't have to worry about taking calls from people where my card was compromised, can you cancel these debts? Those disappear, creating a lower cost for the issuing bank, creating a lower cost for the merchant, because our interchange rates as a result are lower, making it the least expensive credit card in the marketplace to use. But that being said, in the traditional space, we get to set our own rules. Visa and MasterCard are in a real pickle. They have nothing against cannabis. They have nothing against CBD. How do we know that? Because they process for cannabis in Canada. What is the difference? The difference is that in Canada, cannabis is federally legal. In the United States, it's not federally legal. Now, does that illegality stop them? No. FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Division of the U.S. government, has issued guidelines that allow banks to deal with cannabis merchants. There are between 500 and 600 banks in the U.S. out of the approximately 8,000 banks. There are 500 to 600 that are cannabis friendly. What does that mean? It means that they are willing to deal with cannabis. They're willing to hold their checking accounts. They're willing to accept cash deposits. They're willing to work with the cannabis industry. But Visa has a contract where every single card that a bank issues that has the Visa name on it can be used by any merchant who is able to accept Visa or MasterCard. And it doesn't matter whether it's a debit card or a credit card if they carry the brand. So if you have Bank of America that does not want to touch cannabis because it scares them from a risk perspective, then in order to keep Bank of America as a Visa card issuer, Visa has to say, no, we won't accept cannabis anywhere in the U.S. Otherwise, they violate their contract that their card can be accepted at any merchant, and they violate the requirement that they have of every merchant that if it's a Visa branded card, you have to accept it. And it doesn't matter whether it's a debit card, a credit card, it doesn't matter whether it costs you 3% or 1%. Doesn't matter. You have to accept it. Those old, what we call legacy contracts, prevent Visa and MasterCard from being able to accept those cards. We're the new kid on the block. We get to set the rules. So what are our rules? If you, as a bank, want to issue X-Card branded cards, and trust me, we would welcome any bank to do that, we're going to make it as inexpensive for you to do it, as easy for you to do it, but you have to understand we will allow X-Card branded cards to be used at cannabis locations. If you're cannabis friendly, come on board. If you're not going to be issuing the X-Card branded card, it's that simple.
Awesome.
Now,
That serves a very large market, and some people that I know, in particular as well in Canada and in the US, that are running companies that are in the space. I'm sure they would love to hear that, and I'll make sure to share this information with them. But also anybody else listening, if you know the cannabis space, definitely a great group of people to get introduced to.
it's a great group of people, and it gives us an easy point of entry because consumers who want to buy cannabis legally without any difficulty can easily utilize our services. And there are other payment services that are out there that try to support the debit card, point of banking, and other types of systems, but they're all guilty of one thing that a lot of people don't realize. They're guilty of bank fraud. And the reason that they're guilty of bank fraud is because if you process a credit card in a way that the bank who issued the card thinks it's for a reason other than what you are representing, cashless ATMs, point of banking systems process in $5, $10, and $20 increments because they're trying to make it look like a cash withdrawal from an ATM. If you do that in a cannabis transaction, you are guilty of violating, I believe it's 18 U.S.C. 1344. I forget, I think it's the first, but I don't have that in front of me. And that is bank fraud, because you are using misrepresentation to gain access to a bank's funds, whether it's the bank's own money or that they're custodians of. And so a lot of the systems that are out there now actually expose the cannabis merchants to bank fraud charges, which would violate the Cole memo and put them in a position that the DEA could, if they ever decided to enforce it, shut them down. Ours is truly legal because of how it's structured. Most all of the others are not.
So how does World XPay deal with money laundering, with all this being said?
We're a digital system. Because we're a digital system, we're not accepting cash. And generally speaking, money laundering is a function of finding a way to get cash into a bank, converting it from cash to digital. We require...
Sometimes answers can be simple.
Yes, and don't forget, we also require the merchant to be approved by us. And when they're approved by us, we want to see a copy of their license. We want to see the things that tell us you're doing business legally. And keep in mind, ours is digital only.
So then my final question here is for the both of you. What is it like to, and how do you build an effective team culture where everybody's opinions, thoughts, ideas can be heard and weighed properly, while also maintaining high velocity to a solution? And to keep it simple, we can focus among, let's say, an executive team in the financial services industry.
We have a very innovative group of individuals, and we're focused on improving the financial space in every possible way that is legal and ethical. We don't have yet, but have every intention of bringing to our platform a consumer and a merchant board where merchants can elect a group of business owners that can openly represent their wants and needs to us, and consumers as well. We're not afraid of taking risks. Let me give you an example. We understand what is happening in the marketplace. We understand about the difficulties that the cannabis industry has. One of the difficulties that they have is that, according to the IRS code 280 ECHO, except for cost of goods sold, they have absolutely zero income tax deductions. Absolutely zero. So the federal government is actually a partner of every cannabis location, because when they can't deduct any of their expenses, the government gets to tax them on adjusted gross income after the cost of goods sold is determined. And they basically make as much money off of the cannabis industry as cannabis dispensaries. So what have we done? We came out and have created, and in the very near future, probably in the next 30 to 60 days, we'll be releasing a program that can eliminate up to 60% of any business's tax liability, income tax liability, including cannabis industries.
Wow.
And we can
That's
do
a game
it,
changer.
and we can do it legally. Okay. Now, is that because we're better than anybody else? Nah, it's not for me to say. That's for our customers to say. What it is, as far as we're concerned, is that we are willing to listen to the things that are going on in the industry. We're willing to think about and try to find ways around it. This particular program has been over a year and a half in design.
Tremendous. And
So-
Sandy, or go ahead, you can finish there.
The only thing I would say in conclusion is we need to hear what the pain points are. And if there's a way to resolve them, we'll do everything that we can. We don't know how soon, but we'll do everything we can.
So you're taking that information in from the market, communicating it among your team, and then focusing on what is the core outcome result that we want to achieve here in the market, or what can we do, knowing, of course, as you mentioned, different legal structures and legalities. You're thinking on numerous levels. And Sandy, I'm sure you can enlighten us to that piece as well, how someone on your team might have a in-depth experience with one element, but it's the collective whole that comes together to produce the result.
We have the weekly team meetings, which keeps us in touch with the folks that are out on the field. So we're trying to incorporate not just the executives, but listening to our sales staff and interacting with them and going, okay, this is what you're seeing and these are issues you're seeing. Let's see what we can do as a group to help move past those. A perfect example of that is the difference between the XPay, which starts with an X, pay, app, and a wallet. They're totally different, but how do you explain it to somebody saying, no, a skimmer can't take anything off your phone. A skimmer can take the information off from your credit card when you're walking through the airport. There's nothing to do that with XPay and our X card and X Bank. To the point, I'm in the airport, especially right now, and there's flights canceled, and you have to get hotel rooms and everything else. And everybody is either standing and shipping their information off across the Wi-Fi, which can be collected, or they're standing there actually reading their information, and 1 to 2 people away can always hear that information. So all of this is what we're trying to pull together to explain what is the difference and make it easier for everybody to understand. That help?
Definitely.
Let me add to that, if I may, because I think I understand your question a little differently than Sandy did, and I may be mistaken, but let me explain another key element, okay? I have a very strong audit and accounting background. Naturally, when it comes to accounting and tax-related stuff, I got my hand up. I like puzzles, okay? When XPay,
And when it comes to confusion, I have my hand up. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Confucius say.
We're not going to pursue that, Sandy.
Okay.
Greg Myers is our IT guy. I recognized that the solution, because of my involvement in the payment card industry and in the financial world, I realized that the payment solution we were coming up with for XPay was very powerful. So you could arguably say it was my idea. But honestly speaking, it was my concept. The idea had to be transformed from concept to reality. And that is where Greg Myers and his expertise came in, because he's a programmer and he's very focused on programming and he knows programming and he thinks outside of the box. And in the first few weeks and maybe even months of the development of XPay, we were on the phone probably 3 or 4 nights a week until midnight. Oh, and we can do this. And what do you think about this? And we were just jamming and working on it because of the expertise associated with that. Sandy's expertise is operational, making sure that somehow we stay in those narrow lines of being able to get a job done rather than simply having a wonderful time talking about it. And then another product that we have that we'll be hopefully releasing in the next 90 days is Seaport X. That is a product that is designed to work with national and international supply chain management capabilities, inventory, lots of other tools that are associated with it for people who produce raw materials to all the way to finished products. He has expertise in the international space, working with manufacturers, working with shipping, working with delivery. He had an idea that he brought to the table. And again, Greg became involved in taking it from concept to reality. And now, with his involvement on that side, my involvement on the financial side, we're looking at it and we're saying, wow, look at these synergies. Look at the other things that we can develop. So the question that I think you asked was focused on the kinds of expertise that we have and how we complement each other. And the answer to that is we are not afraid of thinking outside of the box on any level. And when we come up with an idea, we don't try to say, oh, that'll never work. We try to say, I wonder how we could make that work. And what could we do here? And is there a way to take your concept and improve on it? And what are the market benefits to this? And what else might the market want? And then the juices become involved where we as a team contribute to creating something new and different.
Amazing. And you got it spot on there. So in summary, I have 3 key points And then I would like to have you all share exactly how someone could engage with you and other things like that. I know that I will be exploring that more for my businesses as well. But first, the major key takeaway from this call show here today is to keep it from most recent, build your team to accent your strengths, but also to maybe fill in where you do not have the expertise is extremely important. And always keeping open lines of communication for how exactly ideas are becoming reality. And furthermore, from there, it's not only internal, it's also external. So number two is listen to your market. You always have to be considering, as you said, Ben, what is the customer thinking? What are they not understanding? Sandy, you mentioned that as well. So that's a huge key for any entrepreneurs or business owners developing new products or even just serving a market in general. You have to continuously listen to your market and what their feedback is. All of that is basically direct signals to any entrepreneur that this is where to go or not to go in that essence. And finally, realize that opportunities for innovation are everywhere. And I love that because I believe that the more people that think that way, the better. And you all touched on that, on how this is something that could be adopted or could have been adopted by these extremely large financial services industry players. But instead of focusing on creating something brand new, something that could perhaps, as you are saying, eliminate fraud or do other things that are seemingly inconceivable, the number one thing for people to take forward from this is realize that opportunities for innovation are everywhere. Just you have to create a new model of reality as thoroughly and completely as possible. Because as you both said, they might identify the potential for change, but they're incentivized otherwise, perhaps through profits or revenues. So that always creates opportunities for new entrepreneurs and innovators to come in and create change. And then finally, the fourth tidbit to go with this is ask what could be possible and what would make that work, and continue to work with your team to bring those things forth. All great takeaways. Anything else you each would like to add, core principles or points for people to take forward from this call?
All right.
Go ahead, Sandy. Go ahead.
He's on it.
Don't be afraid to color outside the lines. There's so many people that want to toe a line. Look around, step off the line and see what you can do, because there's a lot more fun out there doing it that way.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was actually going to say something very similar. You're saying don't be afraid to color outside the lines, and my thought was don't be afraid to have fun with it. Be creative. This isn't a drudgery. This is fun. Let's do something new, something different. Let's have some excitement.
I absolutely love it. So then from each of you, where can they find you personally, but also World Exchange? Just correct me if I'm wrong here. It's world-exchange.com. Is that the best way people could engage?
There's online interaction, so you can reach out via email there. You can do admin@world-exchange, and that'll be filtered out to the right people. And we're available online.
Wonderful.
If you're going to download the app, please make sure that you download the World XPay app. There is another app called XPay by another company that I think is in Egypt or Ethiopia or something like that. That's not us.
Got it. Absolutely. And then I'll attach the demo for everybody listening to this. I'll attach the demo here at the end. That way everyone can see exactly where to get it, how to download it, and everything like that. But other than that, that will conclude this show. I appreciate you all for watching this, and we'll see you in the next Titans Up Today.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Titans Up Today. What did you learn from it? Make sure to drop a comment below with your most valuable insight so that other people can engage in the conversation around what this speaker brought to the table. And then on another front, make sure to subscribe so that every time we drop a new episode, you will be notified. And that way you can keep fueling your dreams and your brain with fresh insights, which can help you along your journey and along your path to your goals. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next interview.